And today's conversation with Andrea McGrew, one of my favorite folks in the industry and senior counsel at Warner Norcross and Judd. You'll hear about Andrea's 2+ decades in the securities industry and where she's worn multiple hats across being a chief legal officer and chief compliance officer at USA Financial. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Thank you again, Andrea, for taking time to have a quick chat with us, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So, Andrea, you're one of my favorite people in the industry. You've always been so welcoming with your knowledge and sort of sharing it with us and our firm. I want to quickly start with learning a little bit more about your background. I asked this question of many folks in the compliance profession and the legal profession. You've obviously worn many hats. What really sort of led to your current path and where you are in the industry?
Well, I think what's funny is my path, most people would probably categorize as backwards, so to speak. I spent 18 years as chief legal officer and chief compliance officer in-house, and then recently made the jump over to the law firm world. And for me, though, it's been perfect. It's been exactly the way I think it should have been. So that backwards journey has just been the best for me, because I feel like in my current position now, working at Warner Norcross and Judd, I have experience that is very relatable for clients. I have sat in that seat. I've done that job. I know what it's like to have all of those demands coming at you, all of the changing regulations thrown your way, the discussions with the business side on, best courses of action, how to talk to the sales team on different things that might be objectionable to them, and sitting and talking to regulators. I've been there, so I know what that's like. So when clients come to me in those situations, I feel like I have relatable experience that I can help guide them through that. And that was really what made me make the jump, is I wanted to take my years of experience and make it useful and helpful to a number of other clients. And I feel like I'm able to do that. And so it's been incredibly rewarding.
Hey, that backwards journey, as you coined it, certainly has helped me and helped our firm. So thank you. And speaking of that sort of transition, speaking of helping folks who are being effectively bombarded with what's been happening in our industry, with the pace of regulatory change, with the pace of, I guess, a change in terms of how financial services firm or wealth management firms embrace regulations, embrace their business models. Any tips and tricks in terms of how folks in the industry and the compliance profession can truly keep up?
Yeah, it's a hard question. I mean, it comes at you from all sides. And I think not only does it come at you from all sides, but we're in this unique position, and there's other industries that have this as well, but we're in that unique position that every time that there's a political change, new regulations get released or rolled back. And so you constantly feel like you're almost in a game of ping pong and trying to keep up with the compliance. What is it? What are the rules? How did they change? And that's such a challenge. Securities industry compliance professionals are just so admirable to me, because it is a very, very difficult, thankless, and challenging job. So I think the best way to keep up with all of that is you really do have to have a team. And if you're at a larger firm, then that team can be in-house. If you're at a smaller firm, then that team can be external. You can rely on external partners and vendors and assistants. But it's a difficult thing to manage. And in November, the SEC released their enforcement results for the previous year. And there were 760 enforcement cases and actions and $6.4 billion in fines. So it's not going away. And the SEC was very clear that those regulations and those fines and their actions are to be a deterrent for violations of the securities rules and regulations. So I think making sure that you're staying on top of that as a firm is incredibly important. It's hard to do alone. So I would always encourage everybody to schedule or to get together a team, organize a team, know what that looks like for you as a firm, and surround yourself with people that can help make that more manageable, because trying to do it all by yourself is incredibly difficult. And I can't emphasize this enough, and I say this to anybody who I talk to and who asks me about, compliance, but compliance really needs to be a partner in the business, and compliance needs to be in a position to understand the full scope of the business. So, CCOs, compliance professionals, we're tasked with shining the light into the corners and cleaning up the cobwebs. You can't do that if you don't have a key to get in the house. You can't find those corners. You can't clean it up. And so I think that's something that really needs to happen between the business side and the compliance side, is to make sure that compliance is fully integrated into the firm. And then finally, utilizing tools. There was a day and time when we could do all of this in paper, and you could just do a bunch of copies and send things to people, but that's not the case anymore. And the regulations have become so broad and so deep that I think we really do need to have tools, technology, things that we can leverage to make that job easier. There's so much information that comes at us as compliance people every single day that you really do need to have something to synthesize and make that information much more relevant, and to bubble up the things that you as a compliance person need to know.
You know what? That's sound insight and counsel for folks in the industry, and I really hope folks take some of those nuggets away from this conversation. And I want to double down on one of the things you said, because we host a series of webinars in our industry travels, and really by and large just try to help our audience and our market participants become aware of those regulatory changes, become aware of sort of the little nuances of interpretation. And one of the things we kind of keep coming back to is when we run the polls, we see a consistent behavior in terms of how much manual behavior or manual processes exist in the wealth management industry, and then much more so on the compliance side of things. You touched on this a little bit around kind of the leveraging vendors, that leveraging technology, your external counsel. Any tips and tricks from your path, Andrea, in terms of the role of embracing technology amidst that pace of regulatory change?
I do think you have to do just that, embrace it. There's a lot of, at least there was, initially pushback in the industry of technology, of my clients aren't going to want to sign things electronically, or my clients aren't going to want to do this electronically. But by and large, our industry has forced that migration to e-based systems, to technology-based systems. I mean, custodians won't even send paper copies of statements anymore unless you pay for it. So, I mean, our industry by and large has really made that shift. And I think everybody needs to embrace that and go along with it, because it does provide significant value to the firm. And so the only constant that we have in this industry, as we know, as compliance people, is change. So fighting it isn't going to work. Sticking your head in the sand and pretending that it's not going to affect you certainly isn't going to work. So again, embrace it. And I think for all compliance people, a good course of action is performing a risk analysis of your firm. You need to know what your specific firm is doing. What are those risks? Because once you know those risks and how they affect you, you can prioritize them. You can look at technology solutions to help them. You can try to craft some of your responses and your procedures and your training around those areas that are going to pose the most significant amount of risk. And there is no shame in asking for help as a CCO. You can, even if you're the best CCO in the world, it's a forest through the trees type thing. There's so much that you're looking at, and you're in it so deep that sometimes you can't even recognize that there might be something else you're missing, something else you should do. And so I think that the best advice that I received and that I would give to anybody else is never make a decision in a vacuum. Always reach out, whether that is your external partners, internal partners, resources that you have at your availability. Don't make that decision in a vacuum. And then just try to cultivate a network of compliance-focused firms, other CCOs, vendors, people who provide that information to you, so that you have as much information so you can make the best decision possible.
Love it, love it, love it. Love this conversation and the insights we're capturing from your walk or backward walk in the industry. And
Yeah.
Now, now that you're at Warner Norcross and Judd, I wonder, I'm sure you're seeing many different sort of dimensions of the industry. If Andrea were to reflect back on her career and say, hey, if there's one thing I could do, if you had that infamous magic wand, what would you do to change our industry for the better?
I guess essentially I'd magic wand myself right out of a job, because of what would end up happening if I had a magic wand is that, we would just comply with the rules. We would understand that this is what they are, and everyone would just adhere to them. And we wouldn't try to take shortcuts or paths around those rules to try to get to a different result. But I also think another thing that I could essentially magic wand, if I could, would be consistency in terms of the rules. I wish that there were a little more consistency in terms of the rules across the different factions of the industry. So broker dealer, registered investment advisor, insurance. Because what ends up happening is that those different rules put different firms in a different position compared to others, and that makes it difficult. And so I think something like that would be nice. It would provide consistency for investors. It would just make things a little more understandable, no matter what capacity you're working with someone in this industry. But again, magic wand wishes, I guess, because I don't think that will ever happen, but that might be something useful.
Andrea, well said. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your counsel.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
As always, we want to hear from you. And if you like today's session, subscribe to Investorcom's YouTube channel for many more insightful episodes.